Hello there everyone and welcome back to another movie review. Today I'm going to be talking about Glass, which is the end of the trilogy that M. Night Shyamalan started with Unbreakable back in 2000, which I just reviewed, which if you want to check it out, it's on my channel. I'll leave a link in the description. But this was an interesting movie because I had seen trailers for it and I was curious because I was not aware that Unbreakable existed, and I had forgotten that Split, which I had seen when it came out, was connected to anything. So thinking about both of those movies made me intrigued about this one. So I went back and watched Unbreakable, thought a little more about Split, and then I saw this today. And I have mixed opinions on it, but before I saw it and when the movie had just come out, I was seeing a lot of bad things about it. And I like conflict around movies because I like being able to put on my own 2 cents into things and seeing on which side I fall. But I've got a little bit of opinions to share about this movie, so I'm just going to give you a short story summary. So Glass is the amalgamation of Unbreakable, the story following Bruce Willis's character David Dunn and Elijah Price, played by Samuel L. Jackson, combined with the story of Kevin Wendell Crumb from Split, the guy with 24 personalities inside his body, one including the Beast who can climb on walls and rip apart metal and things like that. They're all coming together, and they all end up, all three of the characters, Elijah Price, David Dunn, and Kevin Crumb, all end up in a mental institution under the care of a woman named Ellie Staple, a doctor named Ellie Staple. And she specializes in the condition of people believing they're superhuman, which you'll know from the trailers or from the other movies that all of these people seem to have special abilities that make them something more than the rest of us, which is an idea that they tackled in Unbreakable and something that I really enjoyed. So she thinks that she might be able to cure them by proving to them that what they believe to be superhuman are just coincidences or a series of events that make them seem to be extraordinary, but in reality they just have a mental condition. So that's the basic premise. You'll know from the trailers that Mr. Glass, who Elijah Price, and the Horde, who is Kevin Crumb's, the amalgamation of all the personalities, team up. So bad guys teaming up, and it's kind of David Dunn's job to, as the hero, the overseer, as they call him in the movie, to protect the people and make sure that he can prove that he is the hero that he wants to be. So I'm going to start off with the negatives and end with the positives on this one, just because I feel like that sort of matches my opinions of how the movie went. Speaking of which, I did not like the first act. Everything is an amalgamation of setup, clips from all different sides of the story. You've got clips from, or sections from David Dunn and his son sort of playing superhero. You got clips of the four girls being kidnapped by the Horde. You've got the doctor and the mental hospital setting up, and it's kind of off whack. The pacing's really bad. The dialogue's not very good. It starts off okay in the first 2 or 3 scenes, but after that it falls apart, and it does not fix itself until the second act, where everything sort of slows down and you're able to see how the characters relate to each other, and you're more settled into the world and the characters and what each of their goals are. So that's a negative. The first act is not very good, but I will say that it does get better after that. It gets a lot better after that, and the dialogue starts to become less poorly written, because it is honestly pretty poorly written and cliche at the beginning, and takes a hump and then tapers a little bit towards the end, because the ending is where most of the conflict about this movie comes from. Something else, I did not like David Dunn's son Joseph from the first movie, and I mentioned that a lot in my review, and he is not very good in this movie too. I do not like that actor. He kind of just looks dumbfounded. Once again, he's been doing that for 19 years, and he's got bad writing. He doesn't act like a normal person. It's very awkward and out of place, considering that the main three, James McAvoy, Samuel L. Jackson, and Bruce Willis, all do amazing jobs in their roles, especially James McAvoy, which I'll get to later. And also the girl from Split, I don't remember the actress's name, but her character's name is Casey Cook. I didn't like her in Split either. She doesn't have much personality, and she's another sort of down point of the movie. Every scene she's in is just a little bit awkward. And unfortunately, the two of them, Joseph and Casey Cook, they are in scenes together frequently. So those kind of made me irked a little bit. Also, something to point out that if you were going into this expecting to get a closure to David Dunn's arc as a superhero beginning from Unbreakable, you're going to be pretty disappointed. There is an ending for his arc, but it is not very good. He doesn't get very many lines. He doesn't get much character development. He's sort of pushed aside, which is okay considering this is really a story about Mr. Glass. But that's a little unfortunate because they could have done a lot more with that, especially the heroes versus villains trope that the movie seems to be trying to tackle. Something else is, and this is the biggest down point of the movie, is there's a lot of conveniences. A lot of things that make you just wonder why it was written that way. A lack of guards for three characters who are supposed to be superhuman. They only have one or two guards and sort of helpers looking over this mental institution at any given moment, and it's really strange. And obviously they get out, so they didn't do a very good job with that. Even though Mr. Glass is supposed to be a mastermind, he could have been less of a mastermind if they just put in a little more security. And also, near the end, there's a bunch of SWAT guys, and the SWAT guys are just terrible. They have no idea what's going on. They just keep messing things up, and they don't actually interact with anyone in meaningful ways, and they kind of, it's terrible. I have no idea how it was written that poorly. But those are obviously background things, but they still contributed to a shaky tone where you're like, oh, the writing just a little bit off in a bad way. And then the final point that will probably be the biggest point of contention outside of the ending is the fact that this movie is overly comic booky in points. They force it down your throat that this is a comic book movie. They talk about comic books and how that relates to the story going on, and it's really, really forceful. My dad was next to me in this movie, and he didn't really understand what was going on because he hadn't seen Unbreakable or Split, so he was confused by those things, and they tried to prove that it was a comic book story, and there's a lot of cliches that they kept pointing out forcefully, and it just got groans from everyone around me, and I was okay with it because I kind of knew what I was getting into with this movie, but it is pretty poorly written, and it wasn't necessary, especially because I like to think of this movie as trying to break superhero conventions and prove that it can be something a little more in-depth, but they kind of just took the easy route and made it a dissection of what superhero movies are today rather than actually trying to create something new. This is obviously in a current era of the DCEU and the MCU being some of the biggest box office sellers and influencers on Hollywood, which is not something that Unbreakable had to deal with because that came out 8 years before Iron Man. So it's a weird disparity of how similar they feel and how their Glass is trying to prove its point a little too hard. For the positives, which I do have quite a few, there were a lot of flashbacks that gave more context to the characters and their motives and their history, fleshing out both all three of the main characters, really, and through flashbacks in each of their pasts and in the case of David Dunn, they actually used a deleted scene from Unbreakable, which was cool because you get to see young Bruce Willis, but it's not a scene that you remember from from Unbreakable, which I really would like movies to do that more because it gives you context and also comfortableness because it's a flashback and you recognize that it's old but you haven't seen it before, and it's a very nice balance there. Also, there are occasionally some really nice uses of color. Unfortunately, most of these are shown in the trailer, like the pink room that all three of them are sitting in that they kept showing in the trailers. That was really nice color, and especially because each of the characters has sort of their own color. Elijah Price has his purple, his royal purple for being the mastermind. The Horde has yellow, and David Dunn has sort of a greenish gray. I'm not really sure. It's supposed to be the color that his poncho to protect him from water is, and they keep that that tone on each of them throughout, and it kind of makes you be able to tell, okay, if something's sort of purple, it's related to Mr. Glass, or if it's yellow, it's related to the Horde. So it's a nice through line through the movie. Also, there are some cool camera movements, like Shyamalan uses Unbreakable. Not as much as Unbreakable. It's not as creative or ambitious as the cinematography from Unbreakable, but there still were some cool ones with upside down and panning shots and things like that that kept it interesting from a filmmaking standpoint. Another thing is why I personally feel like I enjoyed this movie is the concept. Once again, like Unbreakable, is really unique when it comes to superhero tropes, which I'm very into. It tackles it from another side. It's talking about what if superheroes are real, but they aren't at the same time. They're real to them, but not real to the rest of the world. And how does that balance? What if these superheroes actually are mentally ill? What if they can't do what they think they can do, but the only reason we think they can is because we've only seen it through their eyes? And it challenges you to think of what is real, what can these people do, what can't they do, and how do the physics in this world work? Are they the same as ours? Could this happen in our world? It's a really nice brain thought teaser especially for someone who's into superheroes. The final 2 points I want to bring up is the ending and the climax. The ending, or I'm going to start with the climax. The climax, the sort of big battle at the end, is where most people are frustrated with this movie. I thought it was fine. It's weirdly edited, and there's some choices, but it definitely is unique for any movie. I haven't really seen many movies that do something as ambitious as this in the climax, but it is definitely something you need to wait for and try to form your own opinions on. Even though I liked it, other people disliked it, so sort of go in expecting for you to sort of fall either way, because I don't think there's many people that are mediocre on it. And then finally, the very ending sort of is a teaser for something that might come next. And I'm very interested in that because I thought this was a satisfying trilogy. I forgot what it's called, but the trilogy of Unbreakable, Split, and Glass, I thought it was a satisfying ending to that, and it does give possibility to something that might happen in the future, and that there might be more installments in this world, and I'd like to see what comes next. And it's definitely a good thing when a movie leaves you wanting to find out what's next, because that means they got you hooked. So in the end, I actually enjoyed it. I probably spent more time complaining than I did talking about the positives. That was because they took longer to explain. But either way, I give this movie a 7 out of 10. It's in the middle of the Unbreakable trilogy, in my opinion, or the Glass trilogy. I'm not sure which one we're supposed to call it. Unbreakable is still my favorite, but this was a good movie. There's definitely conflict behind it, so be wary of that. But I think it is a movie that people should go see. So thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in another video. Bye.